following is a GNC podcast production. Welcome to Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast.
Hello and welcome to Geek Addicts, the podcast where we talk about just about everything under the geek culture umbrella. My name is Matt. With me, my co-host, who's collected so much that he's resorted to collecting dirt, Bill Barber.
See, I'm not actually collecting the dirt. It accumulates because that's just like how life is these days. How you doing, Matt?
Oh, I can't complain. Another day. It's just been a busy couple weeks, with everything that has been going on, trying to get everything together. My uncle is improving. He's healing very nicely from what I hear. I did talk to him last weekend, and aside from going stir crazy for being stuck in the hospital for over 2 weeks, he's doing fine. So hopefully he'll be getting moved into a rehab soon. So
that's good. Yeah, it's been a week since we last talked. It's been really hot, and like I swear, like the heat fluctuation just makes you like tired like all the time.
Oh, for sure. It's been weird too because like our bedroom gets pretty fucking warm. It's like, well, I don't know. It's just been like a thing in my life where I always have that bedroom where in the summer it's the hottest room in the house, and in the winter it's the coldest room in the house, no matter what.
Yeah.
So like during the day and stuff, like it gets super hot up there. We have 3 fans in there right now, 2 in the window and 1 just blowing it around the room. And by like a certain point at time at night, it gets okay, like survivable at least.
Yeah.
So I thought all week that it was going to be difficult trying to get my daughter down because she's doesn't have her own room yet. Surprisingly, though, I think what you were saying is true because she's passed out super quick every day, like way easier than normal. So, I mean, silver linings, I guess. But the heat is starting to break. It's still summer, but it's not like hiding in the AC weather.
It's weird. My house, it's like the lower floors are freezing because that's where like the AC directly like vents out, and then like because of the attic, all my upper floors are like really hot. So it's like to try and get them cooler upstairs, I have to jack the AC up, and it just makes it fucking freezing downstairs. I'm like, nope, this isn't worth it. So I had to lower everything down, and I have just fans upstairs because that's the only way I can really fluctuate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we have 2 ACs downstairs, and they have been struggling to try and stay on top of the heat. Really struggling. Today, we actually only need one of them running, and that's doing fine. But up to that point, it's been 2 weeks of hell.
Yeah, it's been rough, but things could be worse, I guess. Thankfully, the humidity hasn't been super bad this year.
Not as bad as it has been before, true.
We've had a lot of dry heat this year, which I prefer dry heat because I'm one of those freaks that prefers being hot over being cold. So
I'm the other way around. You can always throw more layers on. You can only take so many off.
See, I hate being free cold. Like cold bothers me a lot more than the heat. But
yeah, I remember when when you used to come over to hang out, and I used to smoke cigarettes back then. And you'd come out with me when I'd go out to smoke a cigarette, and you get so even on the days that aren't that bad, you just be shaking like a leaf.
Well, I think a lot of that is I used to be really heavy, so I lost a lot of weight, and like my body just never recovered from that. So it still thinks I have all that like insulation when I don't anymore.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't handle the cold very well either, but I still prefer it over. I prefer intense cold over intense heat, rather. Like, I don't mind. Like, I generally like the warmer weather, but when it gets to a certain point, I'm like, all right, I'm ready for winter. Like, bring it
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's to each his own. The cold versus hot argument, I think, is one of those arguments that's just never going to. You're never going to get a definitive answer on.
not until seasons are done away with altogether, which we're already halfway there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we live in New England too, and we literally only have two seasons. We have hot, cold, slightly colder cold, and slightly hotter hot. Like,
True, but I mean, I don't know. When we were kids, it wasn't like this. Like, it was. We actually had like real seasons when we were kids, and now
see,
it's.
the
When
way
was the last
I
time we had like a real like? I mean, I know you're in Connecticut now, so it's it's a little bit different. But like but here, like, it's been forever since we've had like a real snowstorm. Like, I don't think it's been since I was like just graduating high school, which is a while ago now. And yeah,
yeah.
it's been a long time.
See, I'm always under the impression, or I'm not sure if that's just we have like those rose tinted glasses about the past. Because I always wonder that because for some reason, like nowadays, time time doesn't change, but like the older you get, the faster time goes by. And I just always feel like we have this weird perception in our heads that when we were younger, that things seemed longer and more frequent than they actually were. This is all conspiracy stuff. Like this is just how I my brain works sometimes.
Well, I do
Um,
remember specifically in the winter of '05, we had like a solid week long snowstorm. Like, we had the
I know.
entire week off
Yeah,
at school.
there was like the exceptions, like back in the day. Like I feel like those come in cycles though, because I mean, like way before our time, but there was the blizzard of '78. Like that was a huge thing, and then like it kind of like fluctuates where every now and then you'll get like a massive storm, and then it changes. I mean, it who knows the weather and climate is always one of those things where I don't know who to trust on this stuff anymore because I swear nobody knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, no kidding.
Uh,
But yeah, aside from that, I did a test run for a watch party on the Superbud Discord. It went fine. I still have to play around with my volume because I was having trouble hearing other people, but Aaron said he heard me fine, so that was fine.
yeah, so you can change all of those settings on Discord. Thankfully, like all you got to do is you can adjust the one thing that Discord does good when it comes to like chats is you can adjust everybody's volume independently per your screen
Mhm.
without affecting their screens, which is a really nice feature because like this is just getting a little meta on the podcast, like StreamYards, which we use to record. I like StreamYards from a design layout standpoint, but it is unfortunately I can't adjust Matt's volume on my end, or he can't adjust my volume. So it's kind of one of those things where I just kind of have to deal with it.
I gotcha.
Do you mind if I pause real quick? I got a phone call.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I just I had to go dispose of a large spider. Where were we?
I think I was talking about the watch party thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about how the different services all have their own little quirks. I was gonna join in that, but I was so tired. Like at the time, like I was already falling asleep, so I kind of was like, I'll get the next one, hopefully.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, we're in the same time zone. It was like 9 o'clock by that point. And usually, if you have work the next day, which this was like, during the week, so
Yeah.
you get up wicked early for work in the morning. You're usually like hard cut off at 9 if you have work the next day. So,
Unfortunately, yeah.
um,
I saw
but no,
Aaron
what?
and Tony jumped in though for a little bit, so at least you had somebody come in.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to test things out. I need to play around with some of the Discord settings more, and I think part of the issue of why it's kind of hard for me to do that is because my laptop is kind of messed up. It has a touch screen, and I kind of have to use the touch screen because if I try to use the mouse, the screen like spazzes out.
So do you have is it the touchpad mouse?
It is, but I've tried plugging in a a separate mouse and it does the same thing.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I don't know how to circumvent that without actually bringing it somewhere to have it fixed. But I mean, it works fine otherwise. I just can't use a mouse.
Wow. Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah, I had no idea how it happened either. But yeah, aside from that, I have at the moment I do have a bunch of stuff on my hard drive that I can stream. You know, I actually have the original like Toonami run dub of like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and stuff, which is silly as hell because you know the shit that we grew up on where it starts with the Ocean dub and then it goes into like the fresh out of college Funimation cast.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
We're totally trying to copy the Ocean dub, but failing miserably early dub.
Oh, it's delightful to watch. So at some point, I'm probably gonna do a stream of that.
Yeah, I gotta learn how to stream DVDs at some point because like there's a ton that I could like throw up. Like for
that's my next project. I actually have an external DVD drive for my laptop on the way. It should be here tomorrow because I also have a bunch of DVDs and shows and stuff. Including but not limited to all my Star Trek DVDs, which I know Thrak is definitely up for a big Star Trek watch. So that's something I'm going to be working on in the future. I don't have a consistent schedule for when I'm going to be doing it, but I'm going to try to do it as often as possible on the SuperPod Discord. So anyone who wants to, join up and so they're around whenever I do that. I got plenty of stuff. I got some comedy stuff, some South Park, anime, some movies and stuff. So, and at some point in the future, this one I'll probably do on the GNC server just because I know that Aaron likes to stream sometimes. But I was also going to start playing around a little bit with streaming games as well. So,
yeah, no, that'll be cool. Like I'm looking forward to some of that stuff because I do want to stream like Pokemon, not Pokemon, Digimon the movie at some point, just because it is such a hilarious period piece. But
I can imagine.
So I did have
go ahead.
Oh, go on. No, you go on first.
I'll lost my train of thought. You go.
All right. So I did have a story I wanted to share just because this happened at work and it was hilarious. So so me and Matt both work in like machine shops / production facilities. Have you ever had like employee pranks that were just hilarious?
Not to me specifically, I don't think.
Okay. So we had one today that was the funniest thing I've seen in a while. So it was the end of the shift, like it was coming around to the last hour, and one of my coworkers, he had like disappeared for at least an hour, like about half an hour at this point. And I was doing a job. I was running out to the parts crib to drop off some parts I had just finished. And I was walking back and I had gotten a notification on Discord that I wanted to respond to. So I just kind of like snuck around to like one of the back, like the part, like the metal stock room, I guess you could say. And I walk in there and that room has like automatic motion sensing lights that usually will go off when you enter the area. So I had walked in and I noticed that the lights didn't go off and I was like, that's weird. So then I look over and see they were shut off. And I'm like, huh. So I look over into the room and one of my coworkers, he's on a chair, legs kicked up on a bandsaw, like just chilling with his phone. And I'm just like, that's where he's been the last fucking hour. So I finished my Discord stuff. He didn't notice I came in. So I walk out. I go and get one of my other coworkers, and I'm like, you got to see what this guy's doing. So we walk in, and we sneak up on him, and we're just like, yo, so this is where you've been all day. And we shot the shit for a little bit. Like, we weren't going to snitch on him or anything because it was funny. Like, the bosses were already gone. We didn't give a shit. So then as we're leaving, we have the idea, this room has like a door that shuts. So like, let's shut the door and let's barricade him in as we leave. So we do that and we push this big, like heavy, like surface like cart thing that like you can lock the wheels on. And so we pushed it against the door. And because the door is an interesting way where it locks on the inside, so we couldn't really lock him in.
Mhm.
but we pushed this card up against the door, and we put the lock on, but I realized like it was impossible to move the thing with the lock on. I was like, okay, this is too mean. Like we can't go this far. So I took the lock off. So I'm like, he should be able to push this open, no problem.
Mhm.
So 10 minutes before we get out of our shift ends, we get a phone call. He's calling us. He's like, I can't get out of the tool crib. Help. He couldn't push the door. Like it was too heavy. So of course we get everybody in the department to go to the door as we open it and let him out, and then we start cheering for him. Yeah.
That's good.
This is what we do it in the shop when we're bored.
It's about right. It's easy to get bored in these kinds of jobs.
Yeah. Just I love the fact that I was like, no, that's too mean. We have to at least give him a fighting chance, and he still couldn't get out.
Mhm. That's funny.
So next time we will put the lock on because we know he won't be able to get out regardless.
Mhm. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say now. I was just gonna say that like yeah, I'm trying to like do all this the streaming stuff between the two discords just as a way to like kind of have like more like hangouts and stuff, get to know people better and stuff. Because I mean, at this point, like I've kind of like talked a little bit and like I know we did like the anime fight club and stuff, so I've kind of talked to a few people a little bit, but for the most part, I'm still kind of like new in the group. So I figured it would be a fun way to just kind of get everybody together and shoot the shit, have some fun, whatever.
Yeah. Nah, I mean they're all for it over on the Superpod network, so might as well try to expand our horizons a little bit.
Yeah. Just fun little events that everybody can jump in and jump out of whenever they feel like.
Yep. But yeah, so should we get into our topic now?
Sure.
All right. So for this episode, we're actually going to be, I mean, if you didn't see the title already, we're going to be covering the final chapter of the Pokemon Adventures original storyline, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much the
Uh,
point where it kind of like resets and starts kind of doing its own thing.
yeah. So for a little backstory, like the Pokemon Adventures manga is a little interesting where it technically changed its name as it went on. Like there was the original adventures, then there was the gold silver arc, then there was the ruby sapphire, fire red leaf green. Like it would change the subtitle, but the numbering was consistent. Like it legit went from 1 to 29 all in one go. After 29, with the conclusion of the emerald arc, which we're talking about today, they reset the numbering with diamond and pearl and platinum, and they changed their numbering system where every game like series would have its own numbers, and then once that series ended they would reset the numbers again essentially. So it gets a little confusing continuity wise, but technically all of these like the all of Pokemon Adventures is one canon. They just aren't as directly connected following Emerald as they were for the first 29 volumes.
Yeah, there's not going to be as much like crossover and like previous characters coming in. If I remember correctly, I think we only see like maybe 2 or 3 characters in the Diamond Pro Platinum that we've seen up to this point, and they're not like major characters. Like we're not going to see any of the previous protagonists in the next arc.
No. But then we get to Heart Gold Soul Silver right after, which is immediately back to the Gold Silver Crystal storyline again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to Black and White, which is kind of standalone, even though a couple characters appear. And then we get to X and Y, which is also kind of standalone. And then we get to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which goes all the way back to the original storyline again. So it's kind of.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's kind of it's a solid continuity, but they do kind of like the reset feature where they make certain points really good jumping on points.
Yeah. I do like that they retread their own characters like for whenever a remake of a game comes out. I think that's really really fun way to kind of just be like, hey, like we haven't forgotten about these guys. Let's see what they're up to. And it's interesting too, especially with like the past one that we did and the one we're covering today, where it's technically a story that we've already seen as far as the games go. So the manga version will kind of spin its own take or its own kind of self-contained story that didn't have anything to do with the games.
Mm.
Um, and while we both have our own problems with this particular arc that we're on today, I do think that the original story itself that they came up with for this one is actually pretty solid.
The story, to a degree, is there. I will say right off the bat, this arc suffers from a similar thing that I think the previous arc suffered from, where it's kind of confusing, like the
Mm-hmm.
story they're trying to tell. Um, I've noticed this is just kind of a theme with Kasuka's writing, where a lot of shit happens at once, and it's not always the easiest thing to follow.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of Kasuka, though, I would like to bring a mention to the fact that 29 volumes in, and he is still writing it, and he is still going beyond this. He's still the writer of the manga to this day, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, because this started in like what the late 90s. So he's been
Um,
going for almost 30 years now.
97, yeah. So it's getting there. Um,
Been going about as long as One Piece has.
yeah, and like even then, like they've only had one artist change because obviously we'd mentioned previously the first 9 volumes were done by Mato, and then she had to depart for health reasons, and the series was picked up by Satoshi Yamamoto, who has done the art for the series since, like to this day. And we admitted that his first volumes were kind of rough, but he has since I think especially this arc he has really come into his own.
And I feel like he's starting to move past his thing for butts.
He had a few in here. There was a couple,
Yeah.
particularly the character Lucy, who we'll get into later.
Mm-hmm.
And Crystal, for some reason, whenever he really likes Crystal, he really likes Crystal.
It's the little bike shorts. You know, that's what it is.
Well, she was also like the major character of his first volume, so he probably has a soft spot for her.
I'm sure.
But yeah. Moving past that though, Emerald.
What a character.
Yeah, let's talk about the character. He sucks. He really does.
He's pretty, and like a lot of people who I've talked to who have started reading Pokemon and then they got to Yellow and was like, not really doing it for me. Yellow is leaps and bounds above what Emerald is as a character.
Emerald, I mean, yeah, Yellow was very self-insert-ish, but at least she develops into something. Emerald just sucks from the second he's introduced.
And he's got a very interesting design.
He does, and for some reason I prefer his true design when we see it later.
Yeah.
Because he looks like he was designed specifically to be original the character Do Not Steal.
Yeah. No kidding.
Like he's got a fucking emerald on his forehead, like
which they do explain that. And it is like a tie-in to a previous arc, but
they do explain it, but it's still dumb. Like,
yeah, it is. So just like a brief little description, right? So his hair is kind of like spiked to look like pincers almost. He's got these weird like antenna looking eyebrows, which when he was like designing his like character design, he was like, oh, I'm gonna make my eyebrows like super long because it's cool. Like, no, it's actually it makes you look kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And he's got all these gadgets on him. Like he's got these super like high heel like clogs. Is that what you call them?
Stilts, platform shoes, kind of.
They are like pretty much like 2-foot platform shoes. And they got all these like gadgets in him. He's got like these weird extendable arms and stuff. And the reason why he has all this crap is because he's tiny. He's a very, very small boy.
Yeah, he's on stilts and he's using extendo arms, and he immediately endears readers to him by his first major, like, definitive line, in the manga where he flat out says, "I don't like Pokemon. I just like battling."
Mm-hmm. Which,
It's,
you do find out later that that's just kind of him like putting on airs.
it is, but they try. So I was talking to Matt off camera. This arc does a very traditional anime trope where it does the whole make an unlikable character and then give them a tragic backstory and justify everything. But unfortunately, the character has become so unlikable by this point that you don't give a shit. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. But Emerald's not alone. He has a companion that he meets during this little adventure. And I'm pretty sure he's literally just the guy who replaced Brock in the Orange Islands arc. Or no, it wasn't him. It was in a. It was. I know he's appeared in the anime. I don't think it was him though.
No, it wasn't. It's definitely not Tracy because I was going to say, I'm like,
Todd.
that's not
His name is Todd.
Todd.
But I don't think they ever actually said his name in the manga.
No, I don't think he has a name.
He was just a reporter, quote unquote.
He's a more likable character than Emerald. He
But
doesn't
I'm
do
fairly
anything.
certain that I'm fairly certain that that design, like that character design, has appeared in the old anime. Like it was either Indigo Plateau or Johto League, but he was definitely around at one point.
Yeah. He just kind of. Oh yeah, Todd Snap. He was a. Oh wait, no, wasn't he in Pokemon Snap?
He's the Pokemon Snap kid.
Yes. Yeah, he is. That's exactly what he is.
All right. See, I knew there was some sort of tie-in to a game. I just couldn't remember what it was.
So his name is never actually given. It was revealed in a guidebook, apparently.
Okay.
Which is kind of like how Leaf's name is kind of only never been officially confirmed until I think Pokemon Masters at one point. But yeah. One of those situations. Yeah, he was more interesting though than Emerald, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. You know, he was literally just taking pictures the whole time, which is fine. You know, it's kind of his thing. But
he doesn't do anything this entire arc. He's literally there as exposition most of the time.
Yeah, the reporter pair from Ruby and Sapphire did a hell of a lot more than Todd over here.
Yeah, I do like the Pokemon Snap connection. That's a fun little mythology gag, and I like that they're using like all the different sources. But which actually reminds me, they never acknowledge, as far as I know, they never have acknowledged the trading card game, which had its own protagonists.
Interesting.
Tragic, but I don't blame them because those games are incredibly basic. But yeah, so what's fun about the Emerald arc is as much as I dislike Emerald, I did like the whole idea of it revolves around the battle frontier, which is like one of the most. It's a thing that Pokemon really tries to push, and I feel like it never really gets used much.
I don't know if it's in the most recent games or not. I know it was a thing like all the way up until the point where I stopped playing like the new games, but
the only one I ever did was the one in Emerald. So
okay. I think I played around a little bit with the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire one because me and my buddy Jake would team up. But
that one too, because it's based off the Emerald one. But honestly, that's the most iconic Battle Frontier because it was also the one that the show was based off of. With that entire filler season, which I love. But yeah, so the Battle Frontier idea is interesting. I like that they fleshed out the Frontier brains. Yeah, to a degree. Some of them have vastly different personalities than they did in the game/anime.
I can imagine.
Like
I kept expecting so Noland. I kept expecting there to be a reveal with him because he looks strikingly like one of the protagonists in the following arc. So when they mentioned that what's his name, Scott, gathered the Frontier brains from all over, like I thought they were going to reveal that he came from Sinnoh, but I guess that just never happened. But he looks a lot like him.
Yeah. Then there's Lucy, the Pike Queen. She is very much the Yamamoto getting all of his freaking fan service tendencies out of the way.
Yes, because every anime manga needs either a creepy snake man or a sexy snake lady. And it looks like he went with a sexy snake lady this time.
Yeah. She also gets up in Todd's business a lot, which is really funny because he doesn't know how to react.
Yeah, she like sneaks up behind him and whispers in his ear occasionally. Like,
Yeah. She's also got like the one Yamamoto butt shot in this entire arc, so he got it. At least
mhm.
it's a character that I assume is, I hope, of age. I have no fucking idea. Pokemon's weird, but yeah, still a weird trademark that Yamamoto has. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, everyone's got their thing, right?
Yeah, it's weird that it's in the Pokemon manga of all things.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Japan has different standards when it comes to that kind of thing.
Japan's different. That's all we can
Yeah,
say.
I mean, Dragon Ball was made for kids too, and there's just straight up boobies in it. So
True. Pokemon is. I just laugh because the Pokemon manga is legit marketed at a very young age.
mhm.
But that's
um,
besides. There's nothing inappropriate in this manga. It's just something. It's a fun observation that we like to make as fans.
yeah.
Um,
But so the way that the whole like Battle Frontier works is there's the 7 frontier brains, and they each have like their own like area that they run, and they're basically just like different kinds of challenges, and they're not. I noticed that like the last 3 kind of had like the same type of setup, but the first few that we had really interesting takes on how
yeah,
the battles worked.
that bugged the shit out of me because it's like I'm like, okay, this is cool. Each battle is pretty unique, and then it's like they get through like half of them, and it's like, fuck it, just rush the rest. It's like great.
Yeah, it's just like all the rest are just tournaments. Like what?
Yeah, it was like, okay, cool, I guess. Thanks. Like you had me interested in this annoying arc that with a character I don't like, but then you just immediately like, fuck that, rush through it. It's like
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah. I did like I liked Nolan's his was it the battle pike or something? I don't remember.
Yeah, they're all named after pikes. I like that the guy who runs the Battlefront here as well as Scott is like he's essentially a variation of like the guy at the start of every gym who always who's like your hype man basically.
Hmm. Yeah, I think he does appear. It might be an Emerald, but it could be Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire.
Hmm.
You know, it is an Emerald because I remember I watched the Team 4 Star Let's Play of Emerald, and he kept showing up.
Yeah. Um so there's like this overarching plot too in this arc where like there's this masked man in like a suit of armor who's kind of seems to be the guy stirring the shit basically.
Which is running around with a sword too, like not
Because
even bothering a Pokemon usually.
yeah, like because the entire overarching theme of this arc is they're trying to capture Jirachi, um, which makes sense considering Jirachi is like technically the main legendary of. He's the Mew. He's essentially the Mew of the Hoenn region, who wasn't covered at all in Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah.
They had Celebi instead.
Well, they kind of do that. I've noticed that they've been doing that in the manga in general a lot lately. At least with
Yeah,
like the stuff that we've read so far. Because they did that with or rather they're going to do it later with Arceus. That's the main thing with Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
mm,
And then they did the Deoxys in the previous arc.
true. Yeah, that's right. Damn.
Hmm.
um, so I another thing that I found really interesting in this arc too was about like halfway through the Battle Frontier, we get revealed that Emerald isn't working alone. He actually has people kind of feeding him information, and I love the way that they kind of box this character's like appearance, where all you see is like the face from like here down, like
Hmm.
nose down, and then you see the pigtails, and you're like, oh, I know exactly who that is, but they're not going to show us yet because they want to leave us in suspense.
Even though anyone who's been reading up to this point, it's a pretty distinct character design. It's
Yeah,
not like it's not a
it's
secret.
obviously Crystal, and I'm like, oh, he's working with Crystal. That's interesting. I wonder where this is going to go. It's amazing to me in this arc how whenever the previous cast shows up, I immediately got more interested.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when Ruby and Sapphire show up.
Yeah, there's like a one-off panel where it's like just Ruby and Sapphire just chilling, and it's like I'm like, oh, I'm interested, and then they go away again. You're like, fuck, back to Emerald.
I was really into it in the final when the final volume started and Gold showed up. It's like, Gold's my favorite. I love Gold.
Yeah, and Yamamoto
It,
finally figured out how to draw him.
yeah, not nearly enough screen time for Gold or page time, I guess.
I will say one of my favorite gags in this manga is when they're in the museum and Ruby makes the comment about, wow, it's so cool that they have statues of the Dex holders.
Yeah, right.
I was like, convenient. And why did they make Red shirtless? Like,
yeah, right.
Because he forgot that he didn't have a shirt the previous arc.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. I loved when they had Ruby and Sapphire here, and they kind of like retconned out their love. Well, they didn't retcon it out, but they kind of like downplayed their love confession at the end, where Ruby conveniently forgot.
But then, like later, he kind of makes a comment that kind of makes it seem like maybe he does remember at least a little bit of it.
I'm assuming he remembers. He's just playing it off like he doesn't.
It was still kind of left up in the air, but hopefully that gets touched on with their like little sequel arc.
I mean, they're still but they're still clearly flirting the entire time, so it's like it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, because I definitely like them as a duo.
Their dynamic was great. Like whenever they showed up, like I love how like Sapphire's like portrayal has finally been solidified in this, where she's just kind of like she's accepted the regular world, but she still has her quirky personality.
Yeah, she's still got her like pointy teeth.
Yeah. There was some fun stuff whenever they appeared. The only downside is it's like this was like interspliced between like the sections where Emerald was doing whatever Emerald was doing. We should talk about the septile because the septile is kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
So Emerald has a septile, but it's like kind of implied that it's not actually his, but it also is kind of his at the same time.
It's the same Pokemon that Wally used in the Ruby Sapphire arc.
Yep, it's
at the time was a Grovyle.
It's the Trico that got lost that Wally obtained when it was a Grovyle, and then it's since evolved into a Septile, and it is bitter as shit.
Yeah,
and I kind of love that.
I love the scene where Ruby recognizes it, and he's like, "Hey, I remember you. I saw you back in Professor Birch's lab and stuff." And then Septile has the flashback of him like completely rejecting him.
Yeah, being like, "What?" It was just like a funny thing where it's like this one quote about it being lame, like what a lame Pokemon keeps going in its head. Then he just fucking bitch slaps Ruby, which is super great. Septile is my favorite Pokemon, so I whenever he's on screen, I'm always like excited. It's too bad that he was attached to such a unlikable character.
Yeah, I'm not knocking him by any means, but I think it's interesting how like Septile was always like my least favorite out of the Hoenn starters. But I've met so many people who just love Septile, and it's fascinating to me.
He's great. He's got Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade fucking owns everything in that game.
Fair.
They even use it in the manga at one point, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, Leaf Blade!"
Yep, it's great. So yeah, the suit of armor man is after Jirachi, and Emerald is there to stop it. Because this is Jirachi's 1 week of being awake every 1,000 years, and during that time, you can make 3 wishes.
I did like how they played with the whole wish thing in the manga as opposed to the movie, which was dumb.
Well, I did notice that the manga definitely. I'd have to look at like release dates and stuff, but they definitely one definitely got inspiration from the other because there was a lot of similarities between the two.
I'm pretty sure from what I've read, Kasuga gets like a brief outline and character synopsis of the games before the games are out, so he can start making the manga, which is why like he generally has very different ideas compared to like the games. And I'm assuming the anime is similar, where they kind of get a rough outline, but they go in their own direction, which is why there's such a contrast between the
Yeah.
three.
Well, like with the Jirachi Wishmaker movie, like I know we're kind of like skipping around a little bit, but the armor man does eventually get his. Oh, well, we should probably say who he is before we get into
Yeah.
that.
So the way they reveal it is he lifts up his mask and it's a man with a beard, and it's like it's Archie, of course. And even though I'm not gonna lie, when he took the mask off, I'm like, who is that again? Like, because I had
You didn't
completely forgotten.
recognize Archie?
Not with the helmet. When they showed his face next to it, I was like, oh right, it's that guy.
Hmm.
Um,
So yeah, he still wants the ocean to be all powerful and be in control of it and everything. So when he does get his wish, he pretty much makes a like Kyogre abomination. And I found
which
that
is
interesting because it parallels with the movie, because in
where
the
they make
movie
that
there's a giant
Groudon
Groudon fake.
abomination thing.
Yeah. So
That is weird. I
thought
never thought of that.
I thought that was interesting how we have that contrast between the two.
Hmm. That is actually really weird. I wouldn't put it past Kazuka to completely come up with that idea on his own independent. But like
Mhm.
if they truly were made at different times, that is a hilarious coincidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Um
But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
so we should probably talk a little bit about Emerald's backstory now, which is we're jumping around a lot, but to be fair, this arc is kind of all over the place as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Emerald's backstory is kind of interesting, where it's revealed that he was one of the kids at the. Was it an orphanage or was it just a daycare?
I believe it was an orphan. Oh, no, it was technically a school, but I think it was like an orphan, like it was technically like an orphanage school like combination thing.
Yeah. It was like this like it was basically a bunch of children, and it was actually the same group of children that you see with Crystal when she is first introduced into the manga.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like continuity actually. This is where I got really interested because I'm like, oh, stuff's happening now. This is actually continuity. Cool.
Now I kind of
Um,
want to go back to the like when Crystal was first introduced and see if I can find that character design there.
I guarantee he's not there. Like I have a strong suspicion that he was not there.
Fair. I mean, he also looked very different than he does at this point, but
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm slipping exactly what happens here. Do you know by any chance?
with
The flat
the flashback.
flashback.
So
Yeah.
the basic story of it was, see, he's incredibly short, which I identify with. Um, but to the point where he's like a straight up chibi,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else is like normal. So he got made fun of for being short a lot, and ultimately he was like, all right, well, fuck these kids, I'm gonna go be friends with Pokemon. And he's hanging out with Pokemon, and they're helping him out with all the stuff that he can't do because he's so short. Then kids start making fun of him because he makes the Pokemon do everything for him. So he's like, all right, well, fuck this, I'm just gonna go and do my own thing, and fuck everyone, fuck Pokemon, like not gonna bother with any of that. And then he ends up getting sent to that orphanage where like it's obvious that he still likes Pokemon and he still wants to like be involved with Pokemon, but he's at this point kind of like traumatized by being made fun of and abused by all the other kids. So he comes up with a design for this crazy like all these different apparatuses and shit that he can attach to himself, to like with the extendo arms and the big like platform shoes and everything, to make himself look bigger and be able to do more things on his own and whatnot.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get he met Crystal at that orphanage and found out that she had been doing all the stuff that she had been doing for Professor Oak as a way to make money to have the orphanage fixed up because the place was completely run down.
Yeah.
And when he found that out, he was super inspired. He wanted to be just like her and do all this, meaningful stuff. So he goes to Professor Oak and asks for a Pokedex. And Professor Oak is pretty much like, yeah, I can tell, that you're passionate about this, and I totally get that. but I'm not giving you a Pokedex because you're bullshitting, and I see right through you. So come back to me in a few years, work on yourself, and then we'll talk. Is essentially what
Which kind of
what it came down
reminds
to.
me of it kind of reminds me of when Gold wanted his Pokédex.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, fuck off, no, the entire
Well,
time.
it was definitely completely different, like different reasoning for both characters. I mean,
Well, Gold was a
Gold is kind
shithead,
of Gold.
basically.
Yeah, Gold is a shithead, but he wanted the Pokedex so that he could keep up with Silver, because at that point he still considered Silver to be like an enemy.
Mm.
Whereas Emerald, I feel, had maybe more noble ideas. Like he was looking up to Crystal as somebody who was being very selfless and giving, and he wanted to emulate that. But he needed to be more honest with himself about who he is before he could, it's one of those kind of like fix what's wrong within yourself before you try to fix things outside of yourself.
It's kind of like I still think the best version of this is Green, where like she had her whole character arc, and then like literally it ended with Oak being like, stealing is wrong, here's your Pokédex. I thought her arc was probably the most interesting out of, because every arc, like it's like the main two get their Pokédexes, and then there's always the one. Although in Gold and Silver it was a little weird how they did it, where it was actually one of the main ones had to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's besides the point. But yeah. So going back to Emerald now, they kind of like they really try to make him seem sympathetic, but the whole time I was kind of like, he's still a dick.
Yeah, well, they waited until like halfway through the last volume to actually start giving that backstory, and it's like,
and by that point, your opinion's already solidified.
yeah, like the arc is already about to end, and
because it was
we're
right
not,
after
we're not going to see him again after this arc. If he ever comes up again, it's not for a long time.
He's in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire.
I figured as much.
I haven't read it yet, but I've heard he does get somewhat of a character derailment or redemption, I guess you could say. But I haven't read it yet, so I can't comment. So I one thing I find interesting too is like the reason he gets his whole like flashback like tragic backstory is because Gold finally makes his appearance, and he basically is all like, "Oh yeah, I need you to make a wish to bring back my friends," essentially. And Emerald makes the wish, but he gets rejected, and Jirachi doesn't grant it, which kind of puts him into like a heroic kind of like mental breakdown for a while there.
Mm-hmm. Kind of similar to what Red had in the previous arc.
Yeah, although Red's was actually, I don't know whose was worse because they were both pretty bad.
No, I think Emerald's is tied to like inherent issues with his character right from the get-go.
I'll give Emerald the credit here. Emerald's was actually more believable.
Red was actually very well developed and pretty much where he should be by the time his mental crisis came. So it was kind of like left field with him.
Yeah. I clearly just missed this too. We didn't talk about, so Ruby and Sapphire actually show up earlier on, and they actually participate in a tournament towards the end. And one of my favorite things, what I was bummed by is we don't see Sapphire's battle like at all.
Yeah, I was a little bit bummed about that too.
But and we find out she apparently got steamrolled, which I was like, God damn it. Like, really?
And she's the battler of the three too.
I
mean, I guess Emerald technically is the battler, but let's be real. Like the one who was going around doing the gym stuff, like that's the real battler.
I do want to say though, like we did see Ruby's battle, and while he still is very he's very Ruby throughout the entire thing, the way he handled the battle was awesome. Like I loved so he brought back his three main Pokemon. Like he brought back his Milotic, his Swampert, and his
it was a Curlia, wasn't it?
Yes, yep, which is, I'm still amazed that hasn't evolved yet.
I thought it was going to evolve while it was with Wally. I think it's because that was like Wally's thing in the game. So I assumed it would be a Gardevoir, but who knows? Maybe it'll end up being a Gallade.
Maybe.
when it comes back. Who knows?
See, my only reason I don't think so is just because Ruby's the contest one, and Gardevoir would make a lot more sense contest wise.
True. Yeah, because no, melodic is the beauty one. Is Curly the cute one? What I use for cute contests?
I think so.
Okay, that makes sense.
I love how my favorite part about this though is like the entire time his Milotic is fighting, he's all like, "Look at how beautiful she is," and I'm just like, it's so funny. It shows a massive amount of character growth.
Yeah, I think out of the 10 protagonists we've had throughout this manga series up to this point, I think Ruby is easily the most developed and the best rounded.
I'm honestly, this arc kind of solidified to me that Ruby and Sapphire might be my favorite of the two protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
Which bums me out because Sapphire did fucking nothing in this arc.
Yeah.
But she was still infinitely more interesting than the quote unquote main character of this arc.
Yeah. I feel like Sapphire kind of got the shaft in the original arc too, because when Ruby like pushed her back into the car and locked her in there, so she didn't even get to partake in that fine little bit.
Yeah, which sucks because she is the arguably most interesting fighter in the series. Yeah, when I go through, as we've gone through all of these, I do actually think Ruby might be my favorite character we've had so far, just because mostly he is such a stark difference from his game counterpart, but also his game counterpart is infamous for being one of the most boring protagonists in the series. And they completely 180'd him in the manga, where he is significantly more interesting.
Well, to be fair, I mean, pretty much every Pokemon protagonist is a silent protagonist, so they're kind of all equally boring in the game.
True, but Brandon is literally referred to as Blandon by the fan base for a reason. So,
I guess so. I never really felt that way personally about him, but
I think it's because
Ruby was my third gen game. So,
well, I mean, I love Ruby and Sapphire as well. I just when you've played them all, you do notice that like even I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they really don't do much. He suffers from silent protagonist syndrome, but also like I think what happens is like all the previous protagonists had anime counterparts to a degree that at least gave them some personality.
That's fair.
Brandon never does, but May did, so May kind of has more of a definitive opinion on her than Brandon did.
Which is really interesting on its own because May and Sapphire are such different
polar opposites, like which I really enjoy because I enjoy the fact that they made Ruby the contest guy.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting because May in the anime is basically Sapphire's design, but with Ruby's personality, kind of, and interest.
Not as interesting because May suffered from anime girl syndrome a lot of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, she was Ash's girl companion, which kind of amounts to the same no matter what season you're on.
Unfortunately, she wasn't Misty and she wasn't Dawn. She was kind of the in-between girl that gets forgotten nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm pretty sure I haven't watched the Pokemon anime in forever, but the two most interesting companions he had were Misty and Dawn, so
that's fair. I mean, Misty, I feel like was just the one with the most staying power, and then I feel like everyone just. I know we're kind of going off track here, but I feel like Dawn is just like the fan favorite because whenever I see people online or whatever talk about the Pokemon anime, like Dawn is always the one that comes up as like.
Dawn has a good design, but also like she had legitimate growth over her arc that May really didn't have, in my personal opinion. She also kind of infamously was the only companion that showed up to Ash's championship battle, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Which I still that's just bizarre to me. Like they're like, oh, we're gonna have Ash's championship big fight finale, and the only character that shows up is Dawn. Like, okay.
Oh, speaking of, another thing that we forgot to mention is Latios and Latias.
Yeah, they're here.
And
they
they
sure are
do the
here.
same. They do the same thing they did in the anime with Ash, where they appear as people.
Yep. And I was so confused. And it confused me in the anime and it confused me here.
Yeah, because they flew Emerald to this island in the first place, and don't expect an explanation for how they know each other because you're not going to get
Yeah.
one. They just know each other, and they just ride around with them, and they're friends. Just accept it.
Oh, one of my favorite quotes too is like when Ruby and Sapphire are really trying to get buddy buddy with Emerald and he's being an emo little bitch the entire time. Like one of my favorite quotes is where they're like, we're kind of like three champions. Like Ruby's got all the contests in Hoenn, and I have all the gyms in Hoenn, and you have all the Battlefront gear. So we're all kind of the same thing. And he's like, "Go away, I hate you."
He's like, I don't want to be part of your trio.
Yeah, which is
He'd be like,
great.
good because you're not dressed. And be like, good because you're not dressed for the part anyway. Get out of here.
I love the positivity of Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald's just being a fucking emo dick in the corner.
Yeah.
So eventually Emerald does finally. So he finally accepts himself for who he is, and he gets rid of the fucking wacky flailing inflatable arm tube man get up, and he
and he learns the what the hell frenzy plant. They do the whole thing with the bracelets again.
Yes, and he also kind of learns a bit more about how the septile was supposed to go to him in the first place. It got lost, and it ended up eventually getting to him in the long run. But he eventually gets his wish, and he brings back he unstonifies the rest of the main characters, and we get this really awesome like compilation of just all of like the grass type starters doing frenzy plant, all of the fire types doing blast burn, and all of the water types doing what's the water move?
Hydro cannon.
And I love the art for those because like you got like for the fire types you got blue, you have gold, and you have sapphire. For the water types you have ruby, green, and silver, and then for the grass types you have emerald, red, and crystal. And it's like these three splash pages, and they're so well drawn and awesome. Like I kind of want to have I kind of wish there was colorized versions of those that I could use as like background art, but
I need to look and see what the poster is that came in my box set, because at the end there's like a little like photo op with all the Pokedex holders, and I really want just a poster of that picture.
Yeah, like because I have the signature like collector's editions that are like the special the big fancy ones. They have a whole bunch of like color pages like at the start before you actually get into the chapters, which is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, I love that scene. I love how like everything kind of just like all the protagonists team up together into this like final arc, which is just such an awesome way to end this storyline.
Yeah, because they basically so he summons the giant Archie. He summons the giant like Kyogre abomination, and they basically like decide like this isn't actually a Pokemon, so we just need to hit it with enough power to just kind of pop it like a balloon. And so that's why they do the big team up with the super strong moves for the starters. And then it's like, oh, it's not enough. And then friggin' Pika, Choo-Choo, and Pichu all show up and use Volt Tackle.
I completely forgot that Red's Pikachu got it on. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Gold's Pichu is the child of Red and Yellow's Pikachu's.
Only in the manga. Only in the manga. Yeah, I did love that scene though. Like that was such a cool finale, like just bringing all of them together. Like I love that this first part of the series literally combines them all together. And like Yamamoto's art is just so like pleasant to look at by this point. Like he really like I always thought his Pokemon art was great, but his like human characters too are really they've hit their like stride this time around, and everyone just looks great now.
Yeah, the art in this arc is definitely top notch for what we've seen up to this point.
Like I always joke that like it took him so he kind of got away with red, blue, and green in Fire Red and Leaf Green because he basically redesigned them in his own style for that arc.
Mhm.
Gold in particular, and silver to a lesser degree, they kind of like were in this weird flux for a while there because Mato did the first volume of their arc, and then like he kind of had to adapt from that, and like so, I don't know what it was, but gold always looked weird to me in like the gold silver arc.
It could just be a side effect of his design in the first place, though.
True. When he shows up here, though, I was like, damn, he looks good. Like they really, he like, I was like, Yamamoto really figured out how to make. I think the biggest problem is Gold's hair is kind of confusing
Mm-hmm. I love
because
his
like
entrance in this arc too.
he just shows, yeah, he's in the armor and he just pops
Yeah,
out. He's like, yeah, it's me. And then Crystal's like, you know how expensive that fucking armor was? And he's like, yeah, well,
and by the end, it ended up being useful after all.
I love Gold and Crystal's dynamic where they're just kind of like fucking like shitting on each other all the time.
I love like Gold's like shitty nicknames for everybody.
Yeah, Gold is well written.
I love Gold. He's my favorite, my personal favorite protagonist. I do recognize that Ruby and Sapphire are the most developed, but I just like Gold's personality. He just contrasts so severely with just about everybody else in the Pokemon universe.
Crystal's up there too. I love. If it wasn't for the fact that Sapphire was so developed, I'd say that Crystal is probably the best female protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're all pretty good. Because I mean, I mean, I think actually female protagonists have had the best luck because like, Sapphire is incredibly developed, Crystal's incredibly developed, Green is incredibly developed. Honestly, Yellow is probably the least developed.
She had her arc. I mean, I'll give her credit where credit is due. Like she did kind of, because she started out being very timid, very avoiding the problem kind of thing. Like, and she ended up getting to a point where not only did she recognize at some point she does have to fight, she actually got to a point where she started to enjoy it, as a sport almost, but she doesn't like hurting people, which makes sense with her character, with her character personality.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I'll give her credit. She definitely had development in her arc.
true. Yeah, it was interesting to see. I did definitely enjoy the progression of every protagonist. Honestly, is my favorite part of the ending here.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I also like how they made a point of giving Red a shirt. Like they're like, here, you need a
Yeah.
shirt.
We stopped by your house to grab you some clothes. I also did like that Silver just instantly was just like, oh yeah, I just can just do Hydro Cannon now because I'm way better than all of you. And Gold's like, it took me 2 months to learn this.
And Silver's like, get fucked.
And I do like so when we reveal how Archie got to this point of like, he's running around with the suit of armor and the sword and stuff. So if you remember from the previous arc, the little Team Rocket trio that we had, the leader of that trio, the lady with the weird like starfish hair, I guess. I don't even know what the hell you call that. Her hair looks like it has a kickstand.
Yeah, kind of.
But she randomly shows up in like this weird like outside of time state that Archie and Maxie ended up in after the Ruby Sapphire arc, and basically set them up for a death match to get that suit of armor, which would prevent whoever wears it from dying. Because they are both doomed to die without it.
Right.
So
That's fucking
it's
dark.
canonical that Archie killed Maxie, and they were like best friends, even though they had different goals.
Pokemon Adventures manga is dark.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that we just like, oh yeah, he just straight up murdered him. Like, and they just kind of like casually pass it over too. Like,
Yeah, which is bizarre. Maxie just gone. Not important.
Yep. But he's never going to show up again.
Well, I still got to read Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie though, the as much as I like the ending, I found the final fight to be kind of just it kind of just happens.
I get what you're saying, but like it makes sense to me that whereas like if the story had continued with like the big running continuous story, then I would agree with you. But whereas this is like supposed to be the big finale to the big overarching story that connects all these individual stories,
Mm,
having all 10 Pokedex holders up to this point, teaming up with these giant, team attacks and stuff, like I totally understand why they went in that direction to finish off this arc.
yeah, it's not as bullshit as fucking like Celebi out of fucking nowhere, and like in fucking the Emerald
Yeah,
arc, I mean the Ruby Sapphire arc.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
Also, so you can't really tell from the manga art, but what did you think of like Ruby and Sapphire's designs for this arc?
I think I think it was kind of just them settling into what their like canon designs are
They are,
for the
except for
most part.
except for the color schemes, where like so it's you can't tell obviously in the manga because it's in black and white, but the color spreads for this arc. Um, Sapphire's design is like an all blue getup, which
Oh,
actually kind of works for her design. It's
okay.
essentially it's her
Yeah,
emerald design, but it's all in blue.
yeah, I didn't pick up on that because I don't have color pages on mine. So
Okay. I was wondering because also Ruby's design is it's also his emerald design, but it's all red rather than like the green. So it
yeah,
was kind of an interesting like color shift, which I kind of like. I kind of like Sapphire in the blue. It kind of fits.
I have to see it, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but at this point, like especially from watching the anime growing up and stuff, I just feel like the red is the canonical color. It just makes more sense to me.
That's fair.
But
I'll see if
that's just my opinion.
I'll send you the image on Discord. Um, so what did you think of the ending with them having essentially like kind of like all going off in their own ways?
I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, I don't really know what else they would do at that point, especially with them kind of putting the cap on the big overarching story. Um, oh no, that looks all right. I still feel like it's too much blue though,
Hmm.
personally. I don't know. I just feel like the red design works better for her, and
Well,
with just like the general Ruby Sapphire aesthetic.
she gets it back in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire because they used the short shorts design that they gave her for that game. But
Gotcha. Um,
um, I will say I really like the fact that Red was like, let's have another tournament right at the end.
yeah, and it is like it's never like fully revealed, but I think it's pretty much assumed that Emerald won it just because it kind of puts a cap on his arc of doing the Battle Frontier.
Hmm. I also liked how like Green acknowledges like she just wants to see her parents,
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
nice.
how did you feel about the final wish? I thought it was bullshit personally.
Is it bad that I already forgot what it was?
Scott just wished for the beginning of the Battle Frontier to be successful, for there to be like 100,000 people there. Literally just wished
Yeah.
for success with his business.
I mean, sure, why not?
Although I think we
Um,
did see because it showed like a like little images of all the people who were showing up. So we saw Bill, we saw like the Pokemon fan club guy, like we saw a bunch of people that we've seen up to now. I don't know if you caught it, but I think we saw a character from Diamond and Pearl in there. I think it was
there,
Riley who has the Lucario. I'm pretty
I
sure he was
believe
there.
there was a few because in the collector's edition they actually tease the end of the beginning of Diamond and Pearl at the end, so I think there actually was a thing in there.
Hmm. Yeah, because
I
there was a little snippet of Diamond and Pearl, like the characters at the
Yep,
end of mine. I don't know if it was the same,
that was in
their
mine
little
as well.
comedy routine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
Without going into too much detail, that's kind of their thing. They're not trainers; they're comedians.
yeah, we'll save it for when we inevitably cover Diamond and Pearl. I will say though, like the final quote unquote image that you see, which is the splash page of all the Pokédexes, that was a
Mhm.
nice way to end this arc. Well, I
Yeah,
mean
with
this
the
storyline.
photo of all of them together too. Yeah, I like
Mhm.
that too.
I like that. That was a nice way to end it because it felt very final.
Hmm.
Because it's like I don't know how many chapters the this technically was. I haven't marked on my AnyList account. Let me double check real quick.
If memory serves, it was around like I want to say like around 360 total.
337 337
Oh, okay, I overshot a little bit.
chapters. That's insane. Like the fact that the Pokemon manga has run this long.
Yeah, I mean, even if just counting, I think the Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, and Heart Gold, Soul Silver, add that all together with what we've read up to now, and that's the length of the original Dragon Ball manga.
I know it's
And it's gone
nuts.
a lot further than that since.
Yeah, it's still going, which is
Mhm.
insane.
I think it's
Um,
probably more on par with like Naruto now, maybe even beyond.
probably it's nuts.
Hmm.
Um, so final thoughts. I'll give Emerald a 7 out of 10. The second half is much stronger than the first half. This is unfortunately this arc starts off very slow.
Yeah,
Um,
it's easy to forgive an arc like this when it sticks the landing, and I definitely think it does that.
so I will say, if these arcs were all standalone and they had nothing to do with each other, this would be one of the worst arcs I've ever read.
Yeah, it was the
Because
previous protagonist that made this arc.
yes, um, if you take out like all that the other characters in the previous backstory, this arc would be kind of horrendous. With everything tying together at the end, though, it really does tie in the first quote unquote storyline of Pokemon Adventures in a really nice package. The
Hmm.
art is great. The writing's good. A little all over the place. This is just a Kasuka problem I've noticed. Like it just seems to be his writing style. Um, but yeah, I liked it. It felt definitive, and I'm looking forward to reading the Diamond and Pearl arc at some point.
Hmm. Yeah, the Demon, I believe that's the longest arc out of
It's
the Pokemon
12.
manga.
It's 12 volumes total, um, which it's confusing because technically this arc the original arc was split up into all these mini arcs, but the original arc is technically 29 volumes,
Hmm.
so it's technically the longest. But when you cut those up into the individual sections, it makes Diamond and Pearl the longest, like straight up arc.
I was taking it as more uh like how whenever an arc ends or begins, it always has that little like I don't remember how they put it. It's like chapter one or adventure one or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but whenever an arc starts and an arc ends, they'll say like this is the so and so arc. You know,
Mm,
this number so far. Like I think this one was like the seventh or something.
yeah, it was interesting the way they did it.
But overall, I think I'd probably agree with your rating. If the previous protagonist hadn't shown up, it would be a much lower rating in my opinion. Um,
I will say, I think this arc had a more satisfying conclusion than the Fire Red Leaf Green arc. The Fire Red Leaf Green arc honestly kind of ended in like a wet fart. Like it was kind of like,
well, that's
okay,
true, but I mean, it was also specifically designed that way to lead directly into this arc, which
true.
I don't know whether that should be taken as a good thing or a bad thing by
I'd
the way
say
this one
more of a
started.
I'd say more of a bad because it's such an abrupt shift.
Yeah, because it takes a
Because
little bit for you to really like kind of catch up with what's going on
what
with the
because
statues.
Fire Red and Leaf Green ends with them being like solidified, and they don't follow up on that until halfway through Emerald. So it's like,
Yeah, for sure.
it's a little weird to me.
Yeah, I think just because of the way this one ends, I definitely do want to move on to Diamond and Pearl at some point. But I think now might be a good time to take a little bit of a hiatus from Pokemon,
mm.
just because like from now on it's going to be more isolated stories.
I'm thinking. I was kind of thinking of an idea like where we, rather than like doing like a full on series retrospective like we've done with Pokemon, we'll do maybe like we'll alternate where like maybe we'll do like say Dragon Ball Super read an arc, then we'll do
Hmm.
say like Yu-Gi-Oh, then we'll
All
do
right.
whatever, and then we'll go back to Pokemon and do maybe the first section of Diamond or Pearl, and then
Okay.
we'll continue the alternation,
Yeah, that works for me.
and we can change it up. Like it doesn't have to be the same thing every time. Like we don't have to do like say like just hypothetically speaking, we don't have to say like go like Dragon Ball Yu-Gi-Oh Pokemon, Dragon Ball Yu-Gi-Oh Pokemon. We can be like just every time we'll switch up to a different series just so we have
Yeah.
more variety. And that it also makes it easier because like sometimes you're just not in the mood to read an art like a certain series. Like I've enjoyed the Pokemon thing, but I won't lie, like not all the time. I wasn't always in the mood to read Pokemon.
It is something that you kind of have to give it some breathing space before you're really ready to dive back into it. It
Yeah.
doesn't flow as well as some other mangas do. Um, I'm definitely looking forward to reading to covering some of the Dragon Ball manga stuff. Super definitely, especially because it is so much different from the anime.
Yeah, like Super would be interesting. I'd actually kind of like to cover the Yashahime manga at some point too.
That would be
Um,
interesting. I'd have to look into getting some of that, but
I mean,
I'd
thankfully
I,
it's only 5 volumes at the moment, so it's not super hard to
okay.
track down. But
All right, I think I could work that out. And I think would be fun at some point is to do the Death Note manga because that one's pretty short, and we could just do like a couple volumes at a time or something. You know?
yeah, it's like 12 volume, 13 technically, but volume 13 doesn't count. Um, it's 12 volumes essentially. That's not too bad.
Yeah. And when we did the movie, you were saying you were interested in checking out the original again since it's been a while. So that'd
Yeah,
be
and I
fun.
mean, I own all of the manga now, so it's like it's there and ready to go at some point. So
I have the black editions, but they're buried in a closet right now. I'd have to pull them out whenever we get around to it, but I know where they are, so
mm,
that's good.
yeah,
I do think we probably do for another live action at some point.
yeah, we'll have to discuss on that. Uh, Definitely though, at some point we should.
Hmm.
And maybe I mean the Kenshin films are all on Amazon now, so that's up in the air.
That's true.
Um, there's a ton of them. I mean, I do have those the live action Death Notes from Japan now, thankfully, so I
Hmm.
can we can do that maybe.
Well, we could even if we just want to do it, just you and I, just for the sake of the show, we could watch party it.
True, that is true. Yeah, we'll have to discuss that, and we'll figure it out from here.
Oh,
But
you know what I found out? I know. Sorry, just before we end it, I found out that the Chinese Dragon Ball movie is available to rent on YouTube. We
oh,
definitely got to
is
do
it?
that one.
Oh boy.
Yes, and
I
I
mean,
have not watched it, and I really want to.
speaking of Dragon Ball, we have to cover Evolution at some point.
Yes, for sure.
As much as I don't really want to watch that film again, we do need to cover it at some point. So
Like it's one of those ones that I have to watch every now and then just to give myself some perspective.
just to remember that this is almost how Dragon Ball ended.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, so once again, guys, we're going to end it off here. But thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also find us over on the Superpod Network, a network of podcasters that we're slowly trying to grow into this. We can find all sorts of different shows, videos, blogs, group projects we're working on. There's a ton of great shows there, including Superpod Saga, Super Ghost Radio, Retro Rehab, Tommy's Video Game Ride Along, Remember 64, Bar Silence, A Novel Console, Gaming Together, Fine Time, The Elder Trolls, Friday Night Gamecast, and the 3G our shows. I think maybe this is the first time I've got everybody. Um, but yeah, you can find us all there. superpodnetwork.com. And you can also find all of our links at linktree/the Barbecue Games. And with that, everybody, we'll see you all later.
Have a good one.